Test 1, 2, check, check. Test 1, 2.
We'll get started in just a second, but if you have any public comments, when you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. And that sounds like Mr. Langello is joining us.
Good evening. Welcome to the March 12th Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Okay, at this time, we'll do a roll call.
Michael Boyd,
Here.
Timothy Connor is not here.
Yeah.
Oh,
As long as I'm not the last one.
all right. Jack Corbett,
Here.
Michael Goodman,
Good, sir. How you?
Mark Langello,
Here.
Anthony Lombardo,
Here.
and Dan Wilcox.
Here.
We have a full board.
That's great, thank you. No, that deserves a clap.
We
There
have
you go.
applause. Here we go.
At this point, we're going to do the Pledge of Life. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is the approval of the February 13th meeting minutes. Has anyone been able to open up their agenda and look at those items?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, before we actually do the vote, I did notice when I looked at it that they did have a couple errors. Adam, were those errors corrected on this?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we fixed the couple we talked about.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add or subtract? Okay. Hearing that, all those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next item. First of all, we're going to do a quasi-judicial process. I think most people know what that is. We're going to have time limits, so rather than going to all those things, I'm just going to go to the matter at hand. It's on the agenda. So the next item is project number 2024.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
before we get started, can I mention something?
sure.
I'd just like to acknowledge and welcome a new member of our board,
Yes,
Mr. Wilcox.
thank you. How you doing, Dan?
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
And honestly, I'm remiss because in our last meeting, we didn't acknowledge that Mike Goodman had joined us again. So this is all, I was going to do it tonight at the end of the meeting, but better now. Thank you. Good to have you here, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, so this first item, number 4, is project number 2024-010050, site plan for a semi-public use. Adam? And by the way, before I go into this, I know that we did have some problems with, in particular, been in this plan because of opening the plan. Was any of the board members not able to view either this item or any other thing? Anthony? You be able to view it? You guys able to view them? Okay. You'll be able to wing it here? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I'm catching up.
And we have taken, and so what we'll try to do it from now on, we'll have the oversized portion separate from the regular agenda, and we'll try to break those up into 2 files. So this time, in the most recent iteration today of the agenda, so if you go online, you look at it now, you'll actually see the agenda itself with the backup. That runs about 75 pages, and so that, we're fingers crossed, you'll be able to get that to load. And then the other 2 were the separate geotech and the separate stormwater calcs. Big files, not particularly big attachments themselves, not CAD-heavy documents like we've had before, but those 2 both being larger attachments, a lot of pages to them, a lot of technical information there that necessarily doesn't have to make it into the agenda. We're going to try to make that our practice. The Board of County Commissioners is doing something very similar where they're having the oversized separate from the regular agenda. So we'll try to make that as a standard practice, and fingers crossed, I want you all to look at that when you get that chance, pull up the regular agenda and back up, tell us if you have problems with that.
Thank you, Adam. All right, now your time begins.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is the subject property. This is the aerial view from a property appraiser system. Old Dixie Highway's along the bottom, and then you have County Road 335s on the west side, and the monastery itself's in the center. And then if I can get my cursor to work here, oh, good. The location of the social hall and the parking will be approximately in this area. You can see this gravel parking lot. That's an informal parking lot right now for overflow. And basically that's going to be where the social hall will be on the east side of Carmelite Drive. And on the west side will be the more parking along with some grass parking for overflow. And so right in this area will not be visible directly from Old Dixie. And so that kind of gives you some orientation of the location. So on our land use map, we've got, as we have for most of Old Dixie, along the south portion, I think that measures back about 300 feet more or less. You've got the rural residential, and then the remainder then being agriculture and timberlands. And then the R1 zoning conforming to that portion, it's the residential portion component that's there, and the agricultural then being for the remainder of the property. Remember that this is under a semi-public use, so we don't have any inconsistency with the zoning or the land use. This is a previously approved semi-public use as a religious institution, so that's how it's able to be located in this kind of its underlying zoning and land use allow for this semi-public use to be placed over it. This gives you an idea of the flood zones. We do have some flood zone areas back in that area where the Stations of the Cross are located on the property. I think there's maybe a garage and maybe another outbuilding that's here that's maybe in that flood zone. But the bottom line for us, the improvements that we're talking about are in this shaded X zone outside of the special flood hazard area. And then the wetlands, soils, we don't have any soil concerns here. There are some areas of some depressional soils. I think that's should be that 12 that you see that comes in, but that's actually kind of outside the boundaries of our work. We're looking, most of this is about Valkyria fine sand. So the fine sands have a quick drainage to them. And then you can see here the subject property itself has no wetlands identified within its limits. And so that, again, is indicative of the Valkyria fine sands. And so this is the survey. This is shown with north to the left, south to the right, east at the top, and then west at the bottom. And so this is the subject area, not the entirety of the property. And so you can see that gravel parking lot. This was part of your packet. And then that area that we have where the additional parking is going along with the stormwater that you'll see along, basically along the south boundaries of both of these development areas on the next sheets. And so this was also part of your packet. This is the overall site layout. And this shows that social hall, its proposed location again on the east side of the Carmelite Drive. And then a pond there, and then a larger pond on the west side that will drain that paved area along with the portions of the roadway access that are present. This is a detail. This is called a utility plan sheet, but this gets closest to the footprint of the building for the social hall. It may change a little bit still. This gives you an idea of what's being discussed there: the handicap accessible parking, the route of travel, and then kind of the layout of the parking lot itself. And then this is the building layout that's been proposed. We've got some elevations coming up here in a few minutes. I'll show you those, but mainly just what you'd expect within a religious institution use with a event room and then restroom facilities, kind of all that set up. Here's the front elevation at the bottom, left-hand side at the top, and so that left-hand side being the north side there to it, front being the west. And then the landscape plan that you see also with this. This project is for a site development plan approval, and it's adding a 3,918 square foot social hall with the off-street parking spaces. The approximately 35 acres is for the entirety of the project, and you've got the portion of the Bunnell Development Company is what this is occurring within. It's the site of the Carmelite Monastery since 1988, and the 65 paved parking spaces are proposed, and that includes the 2 handicapped accessible spaces we saw to the west side of the building, at the front of the building, and then along with that, 22 stabilized grass parking spaces provided on the parking lot to the west. With that, I'll close. I do have my staff report for you submitted for the record. You have those 3 options that are available to you. Approve the request for a site development plan for a semi-public use. That finding that your sufficient factual data has been presented, and finding that the proposed site development plan is consistent with the previously approved semi-public use, the AC and R1 residential zoning districts and the comprehensive plan. Denial would be based on either you don't have sufficient factual data, or that you feel it doesn't meet the land development code and or the comprehensive plan. And then the final option would be to continue this, ideally to a time and date certain, but finding that additional information is needed from the staff or the applicant so that you can render a decision on this. With that, I'll close. Wait any questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Adam. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time?
Mr. Chairman, can you ask for any ex parte communications?
Let me apologize for that. I'm sorry. Say it again.
Can you call for any ex parte communications?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Didn't do that. So this is a quasi-judicial hearing. Does anyone have any ex parte communications on this item? Thank you, Sean. So I see no questions for Adam. If the applicant would like to come forward and give a presentation, you can at this time.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Buck with the Allen Engineering Group, representing the applicant. The members of the church are here as well, if you have any direct questions for them. Really, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. As you can see, this is in addition to the existing facility. It's for a social hall meeting, a meeting room, and they're adding some additional parking in the more general area of this social hall. Beyond that, I'll just answer any questions.
Thank you, Kim. Does anyone have any questions of the applicant?
I have one in regards to the construction access, the trucks coming through. Are they coming through the main road here? Or are they coming,
Yes, they
Would
will
they be
come
coming
off
right through
of
the-
Old Dixie through the driveway.
because it doesn't attach to the, does it touch the County Road 335?
Yeah, it comes out on Old Dixie.
Okay.
Yes.
But the County Road 335, the property, are there parcels in between that?
Yeah, so, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, so we won't access County Road 335.
I got you. All right.
Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Mr. Goodman.
On the two adjoining properties, are those homes there?
The adjacent properties, yes.
All right, so now I have an additional question then. Why did you put the parking up against the boundary of two residential homes and not further to the east?
The idea was to utilize the existing impervious area that's already there with the gravel parking, which is what set the location for the building, to keep any kind of impacts and trees, down and so forth. And then what we're trying to do with the location of the parking is to get the parking as in close proximity to the building itself as accessory parking for that building.
And you'll have plantings along that boundary?
Yes. What do we have in there?
Okay, so you'll have a hedge?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Kim, also, I don't think we talked about this, but it's primarily day use, is that right? That would there be some potential night operations, but my concern's always headlight barriers. You don't want to have the headlights. And so part of it was the landscaping would hopefully grow up to be right around that 3-foot level, point number one. But the other part is I don't think there's going to be particularly a lot of night use, or it could happen. Don't want to say it's never going to happen, but that.
Right. You're correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? I do. I'd like to confess, that wasn't a pun, that I really don't know the operations of this type of a church. So do they have like Sunday services?
Yes.
And this parking lot that you're usually utilizing in the area that was the overflow, where will be the parking for the regular services between now and the next year when time?
Right. It already exists. So the church already exists. It's further to the north on this property. And there's already, adequate parking. This is basically parking that is overflow parking for the church, but as well parking in close proximity for the social hall.
So historically, over the next year, will they need that overflow parking? And if so, I'm assuming there's some accommodation so that, their parishioners will be able to park? Because this will probably take a year, I'm assuming.
Right. Yes. And they currently park on
The overflow part of it.
the overflow parking. They kind of park off of Carmelite.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Kim. At this time, I'd like to open it up for a public hearing. Anyone like to make any comments on this item, please step forward and identify yourself. Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'll close public hearing and bring it back to the board. Do you have any questions or a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, we approve the application.
Okay,
I'll second it.
we have a motion by Mr. Boyd and a second by Mr. Goodman. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Our next item is again a quasi-judicial item. Is it quasi-judicial? I guess it would be, wouldn't it? Project number 2024-02-0065. This is an appeal of the director's decision. Does anyone have any ex parte communication on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, seeing none. Adam?
We've got the location shown here on the aerial, and also have a Google Earth view here that I'll switch over to towards the end of the presentation. But this shows the lot numbers and the addresses, 6 Sanchez being right in the center, outlined in blue. And if you can imagine, this is just one block deep from A1A. A1A is off to your right-hand side. The east is to your right. 20th Road's along the south, and then the Intercoastal is further over, past Hernandez off to your left-hand side to the west. And so it gives you a little bit of orientation here. And you can see it, heavily treed, not unlike much of the hammock. That's kind of the precondition that you see under this one prior to its construction that happened on the lot. Residential low-density rural estate, being our zoning, that requires a minimum of 1 acre, but these are all lots of record. And then this is the rural residential, the R1 zoning that's in place. Across the street, along the frontage, along A1A, that entire block is residential, limited commercial, permitting homes as its principal use, and then special exception to get the commercial uses for those. Sanchez being a residential street, dirt road. Your extending your flood hazard, this is a shaded X, not a special flood hazard area. There'd be no reasons to have any extra elevations on this. And then the soil type Bimini sand for this area, a little bit of bulo complex over on A1A itself, but Bimini drains fine. And then this is the wetland, just we'd expect. Since Bimini's there, no wetland areas for us to worry about. And this was the surveys that you see, and what you'll see is a progression there. So this I think was the first one that was submitted. Had the tree legend, so to give you some orientation here, I did cut it off just to make it where I wanted to make it as large as we could see it. And so Sanchez is at the bottom, and so your orientation, this is with the map, kind of how you would see it from the street. To the right-hand side is north, to the left-hand side is south, at the top is west and the Intercoastal eventually. At the bottom would be Sanchez and the driveway, and you can see that proposed 16-foot wide concrete drive shown here. And then the tree legend of the existing trees that were on the site pre-construction. The way these are typically shown in the plans, and I think you've seen these before, is that they'll be identified by letter in the tree legend so that you can match it up to the type and size of the tree. And then the X denotes that the tree would be removed in its post-construction status. And so that the X's, certainly we'd see those within the building envelope itself, showing that those are being removed. And then the ones that don't have X's would be anticipated to remain. And so here in this example, it was submitted with this tree legend, A and B were submitted to remain. And you can see here A and B totaling 40 inches. If we take all those, you add them all up, which is what I did, 180 total inches, that works out to be 40% of those 180 inches is 72 inches. And so it's a fairly hefty tree requirement to come back with on a 5,000 square foot lot. I did some math here also on this, and I'll show you this in a little bit, but you've got that kind of layout of the home, gives you some orientation of what you're working with. 25 foot being the minimum front setback, 20 on the rear, 10 on the side, 7.5 as a lot of record. That lot of record, ordinarily you get to that for some reason like tree protection. And we've been a little lackadaisical in how we've been allowing that 7.5 to come into play, but it should be for some reason other than just for the benefit of being able to shift your property to one side or the other and take advantage of it. I will point out here with this And you'll see it on the next one. While it's shorter setback on the right-hand side to the north, you don't necessarily see the same situation on the south to the left-hand side. That if somebody was truly taking advantage of that allowance for the 7.5, they'd come back with a really wide house on a smaller lot. It had 7.5 on both sides, and that, for the record, shouldn't happen, but it probably has in our past. And it's something that ordinarily, if it's happening, it should be for some natural features that are on the property. This is the second iteration of the survey, site plan correction, that came in, and the purpose of this was to address comments from the county's development engineer. And so what this is showing a swale that's here. And you can see the difference with the elevations. It's a shallow swale that was intended to be added. The designer had come back and said, yeah, we'll do that. And then collecting that stormwater that comes off of the home, off of the development area, and then sending it to the right-of-way, to the front. Realizing that you've got lots that are surrounding all of this lot on all sides. And so you really have only one place for the water to go. It ought to go back then to the right-of-way. But realizing also that we're in the intercoastal area, things have a problem with trying to make water run uphill. Sanchez is actually the high point for this. We're running downhill. We've got a grade that we're trying to fight against because everything's flowing generally from east to west here. And so you've got a bit of, maybe a little bit of a conflict here, but the design on this was going to be the high back with the lower front. And you can see what they've done here to achieve that, how they've been able to meet that requirement. This also was the first drawing that showed the two drain fields, 10 by 19 to each of those. That is something that we checked with the health department and wanted to find out, how typical that is. I don't see that a whole lot. I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, that's something we can do. It doesn't require a waiver or variance. It's not something that we see very often. And then to react to a question that had come up prior to the meeting, those are not elevated mound drain fields. Those are at grade, is what the health department informed me of, and the applicant can certainly confirm that. But those are something that what we talked about. The reason why that comes important is, again, you see A and B down here. A east of that 10 by 19 drain field in the front yard, and then B coming into play. One of the things we talked about as the builder came in and said, look, I got a problem. We took out A and B. Health department doesn't have any hard and fast rules on proximity of trees to drain fields. They don't necessarily get along real well. And certainly one of the things that they would apply is a similar rule to what we have. If you have a tree species that has a large you're going to assume the roots are going to match the branches above. Big canopy, you're going to assume that just as a rule of thumb, if it's going to grow out at the top, it's going to grow out similar at the bottom. And that's what they apply to. So that with this one, A and B both being oaks, certainly the installation of the drain field is going to require some removal of roots. It's going to have some impact there. And what I think was described, and again, I'll let the applicant talk about that, was A was proximate to the overhead electrical. We don't have that necessarily showing up here on this. That I think the overhead electrical is actually closer to the right of way and not within that front property line, but could have had some branches extending into that, no doubt. And then B was in a point of conflict with both the water line and with the underground electrical. And so that's why those both were removed. What that did, of course, is create not a situation of 32 inches to be replanted with 40 inches preserved. It created a situation where 72 inches of trees needed to be replanted. And so even more of a concern. So all these words here basically say about the same thing I just told y'all, but the actual text from the appealing the 40% requirement of caliper trees due to the size of the lot drain fields and septic tank, both in back of the house and front, water lines, underground power, et cetera. That's what the builder's looking for the relief from. Described it there, Lot 14, Block 8 of Artesia, 5,000 square feet, 180 total pre-development tree caliper inches. And we had kind of given some commentary. And again, not to be derogatory at all, but we are seeing these challenges as we get further along in our world. The easy stuff is done. The harder stuff is what's left. And so I'm convinced that there was a reason why somebody maybe looked at this in the past and said, I'm not dealing with this. I got 180 inches of trees on that I'm going to have to deal with. That's a lot to handle. That's going to restrict me in my building plan. We look at our tree requirements that we have at 6.01.00, which you have in your packet, and maybe you call them draconian. We are talking about trying to do some amendments. We're looking at those. Those amendments haven't quite hit yet. But as they sit now, the intent of that has been very much on the side of you put in appropriate building planning at the time of you submitting your permit to preserve canopy. The goal has been, stated by the commission, canopy is important. Existing canopy is important. We don't want to create the forest afterwards. We want to preserve what we've got. And so as I've said before, again, not trying to be derisive about it, but you got the 36-inch treaty oak that's in the middle of the lot. That may not be the one you want to build on. Or you may want to have something as a different kind of plan. You may want to have kind of a U-shape where you use that oak as part of the feature of your home, that you're taking advantage of it. I think you can do things here that maybe make it possible to save some. Our reality becomes, in preaching to the choir because we've seen these, usually because of the lot grading, we end up having the moonscape. These lots don't necessarily have that because, one, we don't have a flood zone we're trying to deal with, and two, we've got dirt roads. So no formal stormwater we're dealing with, pretty good soils. And so we've got kind of a good thing there. We don't have a bunch of grading that we're having to deal with. But then the other side of it is that, they're just small, 5,000 square foot lots. The market clearly is not the 750 square foot minimum home. Even with this one, the example, the owner builder came in and said, by the way, they're brothers, and they're not killing each other right now, but they may, depending on how this meeting ends up. But in order to get living area that's sufficient, you had to build up. And they said that, they knew that from the beginning that, look, I'm not going to put myself into, 750 square foot box. I'm going to do something because the market's that. I'm going to live in something that's a decent house. And so that's part of the idea. What you end up with in the end, even with the moonscape, even if we have the heavily treed lot, is the obvious is we end up with a bunch of trees on the perimeter. And so whether it's by design and we're leaving those trees along the perimeter, the living ones that are there, hopefully they're larger, or we're going to go back and replant. And so basically we're replanting into the setback is what we're doing. And so builder approached us and said, I can't do this. I thought I could. I was looking at a 32-inch requirement. I took, it had happened. The other two trees are gone. My site contractor did it. I'm now looking at 72 inches. One of the things we've talked about is potentially creating a tree bank. We haven't done that yet. That tree bank would not allow, I'll tell you this, as we're structuring it, it would not allow you to pay and go. It won't allow you to have complete lack of canopy, lack of replacement, lack of preservation on your property. There would still be some amount that you'd have to have on your property. But that fund then would create then something that we could use for planting trees on public property. Realizing also something that I got to say here is the obvious, we're not an infinite landowner. We've got limited lands also. And so we don't want to create a forest on our own lands either. So realizing we know there's a need for some plantings here and there, but we got a lot of ball fields. We're not going to go and put an oak in a ball field. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so, we don't want to create this fund unless there's a need for it, and there's going to be a limited need. So the other part about it is we're not wanting to create a pay and go type scenario. We're wanting to create something that's hopefully got some utility for everybody. Out of all this narrative that I've got here, I think probably the most important parts, the document did submit as part of the permit, remembering, I guess, two things. There's a DBH requirement, diameter breast height, when we're measuring the trees. And so you have 180 inches that were measured that were on the property prior to construction beginning. Index trees being healthy trees, hardwoods, identified hardwoods. And then what the builder had come back and said is, I'm going to keep those two, and I'm going to come back and plant 8 4-inch trees to meet my 32 inches. And those are a caliper measure. Those are measured 6 inches above grade at the time of planting. It's a different measure. It's a nursery measurement. Got to be at least 2.5 inches. measured 6 inches above grade. And that's how we do our math. And what they're saying is, look, I'm not going to plant a whole bunch of 2.5-inch trees. I'm going to plant 8 4-inch trees to make the requirement up. Now they're saying that's the hardship. I can't make that happen because I don't have the room, especially because the 2 drain fields, because of my electric lines coming in. We do have this down here at the bottom, and I got to state it like it is. No revision submitted by the contractor. The hardship was claimed before the final. And so here we are at this point. The building's done. We're coming forward, and contractor's saying, what do I do? I need help. And so we don't have that mechanism. We're here because there is no variance that's listed in our code or a waiver that we can grant. Again, no tree fund. I'm saying that the requirement has to be met. And so that the nature of this is, and we had a bit of a eureka moment. We thought this would at least put it in front of the board, give some discussion to the planning board. Depending on how you feel about it, we'll figure out. I think it will help us also with some of the work that we're doing on our tree revision, index tree revisions to the land development code. But where I've held to so far, and others have met the requirement, planting on the property. That would be 72 inches as the replanting requirement on this property. And that's within those setbacks. I'm certainly wanting to hear from the contractor and the owner on the hardship that presents to them. But knowing that properties are different, and that's something that they had said at the beginning, they would meet this requirement. It's a requirement of doing business, and so I've held to the idea that that's the nature of the appeal is I've denied zoning approval on the certificate of occupancy. We've issued a temporary certificate of occupancy, with the requirement being that they apply for this appeal, to appeal this decision, and also give us a bond amount equivalent to $2,000. $2,000 kind of pulled out of the air, that there is a requirement. You saw it in 6.0100. If you remove a tree without a permit, index tree without a permit, it's a $500 penalty per tree. So part of that was the $1,000 was my thinking. But then also, if you read that same section, the bitter pill that's there in that section is you remove a tree without a permit, you have a 3 times the amount of inches requirement for replanting. This even calls out an example, 20-inch tree, you're replanting 60 inches. Remember also, I got to say that, this isn't a per tree requirement that you have with index trees. This is all just inches. So it's a game of inches, a game of math. So if you can find a 72-inch tree out there to plant, and there's a way that you can make it happen, you can plant a single 72-inch tree and you're good. And so it's not a number of trees, it's a number of inches that have to be post-development when you're done with this. Now, the other requirement that's out there, just to make things more complicated because we're Flagler County, so we also have a shade tree requirement. Shade tree requirement. So if you have and you saw in the narrative, if you have a lot that's totally cleared, the lot next door, whatever it is, totally cleared, it doesn't mean that they don't have an index tree requirement. They don't. But they still have a planting requirement for shade trees. So they'd have to come in based on the size of the property and plant a minimum number of trees after the fact to have some amount of canopy that will eventually grow up. And so the scenarios that are there, it does work against people that have small properties with a lot of trees. We see this here. We see it in Palm Coast Plantation. We've had good and bad examples. We can sometimes work with landowners. We can sometimes have it where an arborist goes in, does a review, and comes back and tells us, no, this stuff's not alive. Some of these are dead. But all of that's harder in the hindsight example that we have, like we have now. So if you follow the appeal that they filed, and it's how it kind of works weird. You're approving the appeal request, you're overturning the director's decision, denying the zoning approval for the issuance of the certificate of occupancy, closing out the building permit for the single-family dwelling at 6 Sanchez. This would allow the permanent certificate of occupancy to be issued without requiring the 72 caliper inches of replacement trees to be planted on the subject property. Denying their appeal upholds my decision denying zoning approval for issuance of the permanent certificate of occupancy. That would require then the planting of the 72 caliper inches on the subject property. You can continue it to a time and date certain because I've asked you to do something that seems impossible, and we just may have some homework that we have to come back with based on your discussion. And then, not to make light of it, but I think you do have alternatives here. The board may opt to require some amount of replacement inches on the subject property, along with requiring planting of the remaining caliper inches on publicly owned parcel, or payment to be placed in a dedicated fund in lieu of the planting. That payment could be part of that $2,000 cash bond that's retained in part, or maybe in its entirety, to act as the seed money for our eventual tree fund. Certainly, they don't want us to keep their $2,000, they want it back. But I've offered that out there as an option for the board, that we haven't had something of this type before. There was a question in 6.0100, talked with Chair Langello about it. You probably saw it in there. It's a section that's particular to A1A that talks about county administrator or designee's discretion, where they can then have this replacement if you can't feasibly put the trees on the property. That's only in A1A. And this property is not subject to A1A. It's not on one of the designated, it's not on A1A or one of the side streets that's part of the A1A scenic corridor. And so good thing, we've got that language in there. Bad thing, it doesn't apply here. It only applies in the corridor itself. And again, we may have that eventually. I had that last sentence in one of the paragraphs saying, we're working on this. We anticipate it may move quicker now because of the scenario that we have here. This may be a good push for us to get this done. But the index tree requirements have been onerous in the past. This is probably the first test we've had where we've come up with something like this. Let me fix that a little bit, though, because if you remember, Seaside Landings, we did have them come back and amend their PUD zoning to allow some amount, first come, first serve, of their planting requirements on the individual lots to be placed in common areas. Basically, that means around the stormwater ponds, where they didn't create conflicts with water management district permitting. And that's been working well there. That's also something that the contractor was aware of, because he's built in Seaside Landings before. And so that's something that may play into this. But with that, I'll close after that bit of explanation. And I'm prepared for any questions or comments on this and submit my report for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You sure you're done, Adam?
I think I'm done.
Okay.
Sean may want to clean up everything I got wrong, though, but we'll see. He may withhold his comments.
He's nodding his head right now. Okay, thank you very much, Adam. At this point, we'd like the applicant come forward, identify yourself, and let us know your point of view. Please identify yourself.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Joseph Portel. I'm owner of Sweetwater Custom Homes. This product, this house here is my brother's, as Adam said. And I don't know what else to add to what Adam just said. I mean, he said it over and over again, and basically we're an impasse over here as far as the biggest problem, as I see it, in this is basically the drainage, the water on the on the sides, and of course the drain fields front and back, and the trees that we were talking about, A and B, they were supposed to have stayed. For sure, A was a detriment to the drain field because of the root system, and the other one also too. But we're open to any suggestions you guys might have. We'll do whatever needs to be done, obviously. But as Adam eloquently said, 72-inch caliper replacement trees over here. I just don't know where to put them, to be honest with you. I just don't know. Maybe the only place I can see, and actually the drain field in the back, the 10x19, it's more to the center actually than it is where it's shown on that plot plan. I really don't know where to put trees. I mean, we've got about 4 or 5. It says about 4 or 5 feet over here where the A tree was supposed to be. You likely could plant one over there, and just when the roots start to grow, well, then that problem will be to him, whoever lives in there, if it grows into the, whatever. The same thing on the back. I'm thinking, this is just my honest opinion, I'm thinking that we could probably plant one on each corner in the back, because the whole back is higher, okay? It shows a little bit of a swell in the back, but it's actually on the final survey. I don't think this is the final survey. The whole back is a little bit higher so that the water runs through the side and to the front through those berms. So a couple of trees in the back, and maybe a couple next to the driveway on the right side. And I wouldn't want to put anything near that drain field on the left. So I'm gonna leave it up to you gentlemen to figure out what we care, what you want us to do. Basically, we're, like my brother likes to say, we're at your mercy, is what he's saying over there. And he's over there dying, and I just keep telling him, it's just trees, man, it's just trees. But this is a problem, that's been occurring, especially up in the hammock, as you probably all know. Dan probably knows more than anybody since he's a Stevenson survey. And these problem lots you just don't have the space to plant all of these trees in them. Unfortunately, when my brother bought this lot, this piece of parcel of land, he had no idea about he didn't tell me about it either. He had no idea about the replacement of caliper trees. And unfortunately, on this lot, as you can see, we have some pretty good sized, trees over there that would have to be replaced. You know what I'm saying? So he had no idea. Otherwise, you probably would have thought twice before he bought it. But, and I reminded him about it, but he said, oh, I like that lot, I like that land, I like the area. I like, okay, so we're stuck with, and here we are at this somewhat of an impasse. So I don't know. I don't know whatever you guys decide to do. If you can help us out, fine. If not, I don't know, like he says, I'm at your mercy. That's it. And thanks, Adam, for explaining everything the way you did. And I don't know what else to say, my friends.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Mr. Goodman?
Yeah, I'd like to know why you couldn't have put the entire drain field to the back.
That would be a question for Turner Septic. There was not enough space to put it in the back. Again, if you look at that 1019 drain field, I think it's actually a little bit bigger, but that's what the original, but it's more to the right. He could not, actually, the one in the back connects to the front, through a pipe, I guess some pump system or something. There was just not enough drainage area in the back, so that's why they put it in both places. It's a little bit unusual, I know, but with that amount of space, with that amount of land, it was just, according to Turner Septic, there was just not enough space back there for the whole shebang, the whole drain field.
All right, thank you.
All right?
Does anyone else have any questions for the
And
applicant?
before you leave, do we have a planting plan in place now, a proposed landscape plan or not?
We do
Maybe
not.
I missed it.
They do
No,
not.
we do not.
We do not.
This is,
Okay.
I guess, this is why we're here, to try to
Yeah.
come up with something that's going to be feasible, that's going to make my brother happy and make you guys happy and make the planning and zoning, whatever.
That's fine.
the
Adam,
department
I think
happy.
Adam touched on the solution that I'll
What's
go
that, Dan?
forward. I think Adam touched on the solution that we're looking for,
Okay.
but I'll let this go forward for a little bit before I bring that up. Is
Any
now
other-
the time to do it or what?
Okay, any other questions? Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? I actually have a few, so bear with me. So on the original plan, I just want to state some stuff that we already probably know, but on the original plan for the building permit before the house was built, it was agreed to leave tree A and tree B in there.
Yes.
Okay. Who made the decision to pull those trees out? Do you know? Was that pulled out with the original land clearing?
It was, well,
When the lot was originally cleared?
yeah, a little bit of history on that. When Ross Excavating is the one who clears
Okay.
my lots, right? When they went over there, all of these trees somehow were all, there's a power line that runs right at the property line over there. And they were all the branches, these are some pretty darn big trees. They were,
Joe, can you slide up just closer to the microphone? We're having trouble.
yes, sir. All of these trees, the branches were intertwined into the power line. So when Ross went over there to clear this lot, and by the way, they cleared the lot next door too this same time. And they said, we can clear that lot, right? Because if we top those trees, if we chop them down, they're gonna tear that power line down. So we came up with the idea, we had to get a guy to, top the trees, cut all the branches off. So ended up costing my brother $4,500, to do that. So they got somebody to go over there. They said, we got somebody. I said, okay, do it. And then they went over there, and actually, to be honest with you, when I got over there, that they were doing that A and B tree, he toppled them because they were all intertwined. So he figured that, oops, I'm sorry. And that was probably my fault because I should have marked those trees. Do not, if anything, we could have probably cut the branches back, But then I thought to myself, well, it kind of, be honest with you, it kind of helps because on the small lot, you got materials coming in, you got trusses, you got a crane that's got to stay in there, and then with that power line, there's going to be a problem anyways. With A being so close to the drain field, that would be a no-no. I mean, if that was my house, I'd want that tree out of there. Now, I should have come to the county and says, hey, this is what's happening, and get some kind of resolution on it. Now, B, to be honest, B probably could have stayed. Just got the branches back. But that's the scenario about the trees, and the toppling and, because they just would not clear the lot.
To paraphrase, when the site contractor came on, Ross, and then that third-party topper came in there.
Right.
This work happened before you really had a chance to stop it. It was already underway.
Yes, sir.
By the time you came up.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't, it was not an intentional act.
No,
by you
when
at the time.
when I got over there, as they were toppling the trees, all I saw was tree trunks. I didn't see no branches. As you could imagine what I said, but it was too late then.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Goodman, first of all, by the way. It doesn't show on the survey where the septic is, but Adam told me kind of where it is. But I still think there probably could have been an accommodation. The septic tank could be a septic drain field could be a lot closer to the setback. So there probably could have been that, more room in the back, but then there wouldn't have been a planting in the back, but there could have been more room at least for that. But that's kind of water over the dam because that is the way this thing was approved to start off with, correct? That drain field design was how they, that's how you permitted it. That's how it was permitted.
I don't remember how it was originally approved, to be honest with you, but all I do remember is Turner Septic saying we don't have enough. Actually, we reduced the house to make room for the drain field in the back a little bit, but, and he says we cannot do this unless we put a drain field in the front and connect the two together.
Okay,
I'm not no expert on, on this, but that's what we need in order to accommodate the sewage and whatever comes, all the waters that comes.
If I remember correctly, I did see somewhere, maybe it was an initial design, but you had some plantings originally planted for here. There was going to be some crepe myrtles or whatever. Is that what you were going to put in?
I don't know right off the bat.
Adam, was there a landscape? If I remember, there was a landscaping plan that showed some crepes and a few other types. There weren't oaks. There were some other types of plantings that were going to meet the requirements that was originally designed for this.
There was a tree protection form that mentioned crepe myrtles, and that's not a. It was under the listing of shade trees. We don't actually allow crepe myrtles. We still consider them shrubs.
Okay, so that was not
not on a physical plan, but it was listed on the form. You are remembering correctly.
Okay.
The grape myrtles are not allowed, so it's got because it's not,
well, they don't count for what they're.
They don't count. Yeah, they allow, but then they
right.
don't count. Exactly.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Okay. So
I wish I knew a little bit more about drain fields, and I wish Turner Septic was it because he probably would explain it a lot better than I could. But I know we went to some kind of hoops and about how to figure out this drain field for the
right.
For the septic system for this house.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You will have another chance to come up. We're going to open it up to the public comment, and then we'll close, and then. If it might be a rebuttal period for you or whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone in the public like to come up and speak? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Hi, my name's Leah Groom. I live in the Hammock area, and it's kind of too late, as you already said, to kind of deal with this problem. I think it's a little bit I shouldn't say shady, but that, they cut the trees down that they agreed not to cut down, and that we're just going to say, oh, here's a $2,000 fine. That's not really a deterrent for any other builder that's going to come in and approve footprints that are obviously too big for these tiny lots. They are small lots, so the footprint is taking up too much room. They're having to take out too many trees. It is the Hammock. That's why most people move there, not to remove the trees. You can't really replace these 16 and 32-inch trees with, you can, but not very well. So I've just, I want for you guys to think about how moving forward, we cannot have this come about and not just say to a builder, yeah, oh, darn it, mistake. You know, now let's go put some trees down the road at a park. That's not quite the same thing, if that's even possible. You know, so taking out these trees should be there should be much more of a deterrent to take out these huge trees when, you know, they broke your rules, they broke the law. So $2,000 to a builder, you know, when they're selling these, you know, houses, I don't really know, but $2,000, even I could probably come out of that, and I'm just a lonely old school teacher, you know, so I could probably pay for that. So just expressing that, you know, in the area where we live, that's what it's about. It's called the Hammock. It's named the Hammock. We don't want to not, you know, keep it called the Hammock by letting all the canopy go. So I just want you guys to consider that as you start to, you know, think about, you know, amendments into, you know, our index trees. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to come forward? Thank you. Please identify yourself. And just a reminder, there is a 3-minute clock going for you.
Hi, I'm Elaine Bird. I live in the Hammock. It seems to me that this is a perfect example of terribly poor planning. They knew the size of the lot. They could have built a smaller house. They surely would have had to factor in all these things that he is saying, oh my, this is a problem. I mean, it's called planning. Also, I worry if, yes, we can require them to put trees back in, but there's no requirement to keep them alive. So if they really don't want the trees on there, that would be their solution. I do see this as a partial precedent for the Hammock because there are a lot of small lots with big trees. And I think it is important to the builders, the word to the builders, that they have to evaluate the lot and what's there and what's possible and what's not. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Okay, seeing no one else come forward, I'm going to close public hearing. If the applicant, if you'd like to make a rebuttal to anything you heard, you have an opportunity to make a rebuttal. If not, we're going to have a, nope, he says no. Okay, at this point, we're going to open it up to the board for comments, and go ahead, Anthony.
So we have, I guess, 2 parts here. Number 1, the solution for the application, and then number 2, moving forward for any future applicants, especially in the Hammock to talk about, or are we just focused strictly on this application right now, and then we could comment after our additional comments at the end for that? Okay, I just wanted to make clear.
I'd say this is singular to the appeal to the subject parcel.
All right, so we'll touch on moving forward after all this is over. So I guess we have to figure out how we're going to resolve replacing trees on this property. Anyone have any ideas?
Yeah, I do.
We have all kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I guess we have.
You yielding,
we
you're
all have
yielding your
ideas.
time. I guess, Jack, you were the first one to hear
No,
to say something.
Not a lot of room there, but I require certainly a tree in the back right corner, back left corner, and then where tree B was. Those 3. Now, I don't know how large those would be. I guess somebody that knows more about trees can make a recommendation. And then the shortfall, yeah, I would think that be required on public property to make up the difference.
Okay, does anyone else have any comments on that or additional? Mike, you really.
No, well, my comment is that I would make an emotion to agree with the Mr. Mengel's analysis or how he has put it forward that the applicant be required to put in the plantings, the 4-inch trees? Even though those are kind of small to begin with anyway, and maybe in this case, as part of the process, make a requirement that they stay alive for at least 5 years.
Okay, so in effect,
As a
you'd
settlement.
like to see the strict letter of the law applied to this case unlike what Jack is proposing, which is a morphing of that, which is do the planting as much as possible on the lot and do some additional planting somewhere else. That your
I
idea
don't,
was
I don't
strictly-
see the planting somewhere else as being a positive. I see the plantings on that piece of property as being the positive because you are surrounded by a canopy throughout that entire area. So why should we have holes in the middle of it? So again, my suggestion is to agree with Mr. Mengel and require the trees be replaced as requested, plus put a caveat on there of a time span that they have to, if they supposedly die after 90 days, well, then you have to dig them up and put new ones in.
Okay. And I'm going to go to Anthony. Do you have another comment? I'm going to basically go down the line here because I think we have a few ideas.
No comment. I mean, I guess I do have a comment. I mean, both ideas are good ones. I guess in regards to Mr. Goodman's comment on, I mean, do they have the space, Adam, to do those plantings? I mean, is it a realistic ask that they have that space to put all those trees in there?
Probably not. The problem with them, and we've talked about this before. You're putting it on the perimeter. You're putting in index trees are big trees, maybe with the exception of something like the red maple or the little Jim southern magnolias. There's some that have more of an upright characteristic, but as they age, they're still going to have substantial horizontal root run that's going to happen with them. They may not have as much canopy. Some may not have as much canopy as others. I think cedars may be on the list too. Those kind of being maybe somewhat exceptional. First challenge is going to be getting the equipment in there to plant it. 4-inch tree is not something that's easy, and so you're hitting on problem number one. That's a big tree. And so that's going to need something as a piece of equipment that probably is not going to go down the right-hand side, the north side of the home, would need to go down the left-hand side of the south side where the septic line is. There's challenges. Not saying it can't be done. I think you also saw where I'd mentioned it in there, and there is a like it or not, it's there. There's a vinyl fence on the property line now, which makes it a little harder too. So you've got home on one side, fence on the other, and you're having to get equipment that, luckily most of your nursery stock is going to be bound together at the top. It's not going to have much of a canopy when you're planting it. 4-inch tree is still going to be a big tree though. And we had talked before about the two corners at the back, the right hand that would end up being the northwest corner, then the left hand, the southwest corner, kind of being the realistically good spots. I think that's probably the two obvious ones that I would say, but knowing that something that's planted there is going to get bigger. And it's just something that it'll have maintenance, it'll have a maintenance requirement. That's not unusual. I think we've had that with others. It will contribute to the canopy in time. It may create drain field issues. It'll just have to be dealt with, as time goes on. And those two corners I think are easy. I think Mr. Corbett's idea there with B may not be a bad one either. I think there is the water line that comes in there. I think there's also buried electrical, but I mean you're dealing with that. We have situations all over the same kind of with that also. So I don't know if there's a perfect place for it. I had, and I'll admit that out loud, we had allowed river birch in our list of index trees, and so what did I end up starting? In Beach Haven, the subdivision well to the north on A1A, we ended up having a monoculture of river birch. When I said that they could go in with river birch, and ended up having everybody started planting river birch. And river birch can still be planted here, but a 4-inch river birch, I'm not even sure you can buy it at the nursery. That's, again, a big tree. But that's certainly an option for them as well. But on the index tree list, it's fairly finite. They are hardwoods. They traditionally don't have big canopy, but they will grow to have a big canopy is our intent.
So that brings us back to Not being, it's not a realistic ask then. I like the idea of the mandatory keeping them alive and, how we police that or how it gets policed, but I'm in total agreement with that. I think now it's just a matter of finding a spot for as many trees as possible to suffice the property and then, get this thing moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one thing.
Go ahead.
We do have a 2-year clock right now in our code that's, I can't mention the subpart F, but it's a subpart F in there that says, I think it's 2 years after CO, that the trees have to be maintained. It's rarely enforced, but it's there.
Right. I mean, obviously, a method to enforce anything post this point would be to hold up the full CO until they're on a temporary, until that, because this property would be hard to sell or do anything legally to it without that CO in proper shape. Mr. Connor, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. If Mr. Goodman's motion was to deny the applicant's appeal and uphold the director's decision, then I second that motion. I feel your pain. I did this 15 years ago when I built my office in the hammock. I hired Andy Dance. He knows how to plant trees on top of trees. And that's what you're faced with. But it can be done. I did it around a retention pond and a paved parking lot with 10 spaces and still put my building in there. My office was so overplanted by the time I got finished with it that you couldn't see the building behind the trees and the bushes out front. And it was done. In my case, I had to overplant additionally because I had residential zoning on both sides, which means I had additional planting and setback requirements. I planted so many bushes, my neighbors started taking them out. The residential neighbors that I was protecting against didn't like them, that was too opaque. So I feel your pain, but the rules are the rules. The solution to this problem is, unfortunately, legislative. We're not sitting as a legislative body today. We can't change the rules. We don't have the authority to do that. I don't think there's anything we can do but uphold the code as it exists and tell the county commission they need to get busy rethinking the hammock because this is going to reoccur.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. Dan, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this?
I do. I don't entirely agree with the motion. Simply because,
Well, just to be clear, we're in discussion. We actually did not take a motion.
That's fine. And
Mr.
we
Chair,
had
there was
second,
there
that's
was a
fine.
motion and a second.
Had a
I think,
that can be
was yours an
discussed.
motion? Were you saying if you were to make a motion? It wasn't, okay. I did not ask for a second, so we were in discussion.
I'll take it back if that.
Yeah, I thought right now we were just, that's what I was asking for, just discussion. And then, thank you. Okay.
My question goes back to basically to staff, to Adam. Is there a way to go from the caliper measure that we're asking for in the proposed condition to an actual larger size that's not going to be so onerous, that will actually equate to something that we can come closer to what they're looking? Literally, we're trying to figure out how A and B were removed. The other 140 inches were basically allowed. A and B were the mistakes that happened. If we can come close to matching that by sizing up to an oak tree that's larger, an 8-inch, something's going to be difficult to put back there, but possible. Some way. Thoughts? Your opinion?
I think back to maybe what Mr. Connor had said is that the caliper measure is the measure that we use for replacement, being a nursery measure. Certainly the bigger, the better that you'd be able to have, measuring 6 inches above grade in the final planted condition, and then realizing too that they're not trying to make up 32 inches where before they were having 8 4-inch trees they were coming back with. Now they're additionally hampered by the 2 40-inch oaks. So we're not looking at 32-inch come back with, we're looking at 72 inches to be replanted to meet the 40% of the 180 inches that were there before. So the short answer I can tell you is that, you can go as big as you can go with as big as you can put on there physically and with modern equipment and the ability to get into a property to put it on there.
I don't mean to get into design here. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just saying, I'm just asking the question.
Yes, sir.
Other than that, that's everything I wanted to know.
Thank you, Dan. Mike, do you have any comment on this point? I'd like to ask our esteemed board attorney. So Mr. Connor brought this up, and I actually was going to try to bring this up too as well. In this particular case, how much latitude do we have in both interpretation and application of solutions in this particular item? Mr. Connor is saying legislatively, I understand that would be a broad stroke across all lots. We are looking, this is not a variance, it's not a special exception, but even so, what is the latitude that we do have?
So I understand your question, and if you were to grant the appeal, and that is to deny Mr. Mengel's decision, you would be nullifying the code. You would be ignoring the strict letter of the code. You do have the ability to do that. It's a matter of your decision making. Me as an attorney, us as staff, we say, no, we want you to uphold the code. That's what we have to do, because we're not here to rewrite the code. That's what Mr. Connor meant when he was saying a legislative act. We're here to apply the code as written, and that's why we're here today, because Mr. Mengel was forced to follow the code as written and deny the CO. So the strict application of that code, you would deny the appeal. On the other hand, in nullifying the code, to some extent, we've done that many times when we grant variances. A strict application of the code, a lot of the variances that come before you would be denied. But you look at the situation globally and you say, there's some unfairness here, there's a hardship, and therefore we're going to grant it despite the strict letter of the code. Also, whatever you decide here could be appealed to the county commission as well. That's something to keep in mind. It would have to be with somebody who had standing, which some would say would mean you'd have to be here today to comment. And we had some public comment. So getting back to the heart of your question, do you have the ability to overturn Adam's decision? Yes, you do have the ability to make that decision. Just realize that in doing it, you would be sort of making a statement that the code is unfair, and you would be going against what it actually says.
Okay, so I don't think we've even heard anyone up here asking to nullify the code as the way the application was presented, which would mean don't put any trees, let them go and go fine. I don't think we heard that tonight. I think we've heard so far some solutions to basically applying as much of it as feasibly practical. So call it some horse trading. So to deny or to approve his with horse trading with amendments to what that says, I assume we would have that latitude to try to stay within the code as much as possible. But the strict adherence, I think we've already talked about at this point, practical impossibility to do that. And then, I understand what Mr. Goodman said about a canopy. I've lived in this area for 43 years now, and that is one of the unique aspects of the hammock, these canopies on those particular streets. I think if he put as much trees as possible, whether he met the strict number that was there, he would get the canopy. So that's why I think, the horse trading may come in. It's unfortunate that this lot has big trees. And as you said, Adam, in your beginning of your iteration there, your novel, some of these lots are going to be almost impossible to build unless you're putting on a tiny home. And maybe that is something that someone wants, but that may not be also as feasible or practical. So if we have the ability without, I'm not saying any ramifications, but without strictly ignoring all of the rules to do some horse trading. I think there's a solution in here somewhere. What I brought up to you, Adam, was that 6.01.031E and then 567, and then also F. And F was the maintenance part of that. And you said that that had to do with the scenic corridor. I don't know the strict limits of the corridor. I don't know if it is strictly defined. I don't know if a corridor would affect that in any practical manner. I mean, I thought all along that was the corridor. So maybe my misunderstanding of it is helping me to some degree, because I didn't think the corridor was strictly just those things right on A1A, because it seems that we have someone right now in the audience, I think, maybe a couple, who represent the groups who try to protect the Hammock A1A corridor. It seems to be outside of that. It seems to be further in than that. And, I think I agreed with Jack, with your idea of planting as much as possible and then taking the plantings that aren't there. The question is that particular ordinance did call for a 1 to 3. The way it was read, phrased, if I can just read it out loud, it said on number 5, whenever a protected tree is removed without legal authorization or in violation of this code, the owner shall replace such removed trees on a 1 to 3 ratio. For example, if a 20-inch caliper tree is illegally removed, it shall be replaced by a tree or trees equivalent to 60 inches in caliper from the interim replacement tree list or the equivalent in tree species. So, there is a penalty there. If he can grow the canopy back where it was, I'm not sure I would apply the 1 to 3 ratio. Maybe that is some consideration here, but if he were to at least put the rest of it on, and I don't remember the name of the park up there, but it's built along, it has it from the ocean. There's a big retention area there, and there's a restroom, and I know there's a drive that goes in there, and to start mimicking the hammock canopy over the drives. And
So actually, if I'm totally interrupting you, the other part that had the genesis of that particular section that you're reading from was clearing that had happened on Bay Drive. And the park I think you're mentioning is Bay Drive Park. And so that's a bit of the history with that, is that when the several owners ago, before county acquired Bay Drive, had gone in and removed oak trees, significant canopy there. I want to say it was right around early 2000s, may have been still late 1990s. And that had been the genesis of that regulation that you're reading, both the penalty part as far as the cash penalty, and then also the 1 to 3 ratio.
And then there's a couple other sections in here that talks about a few things, but number F, the next section, it says that all replacement or relocated index trees must be maintained in a healthy and growing condition for a minimum of 2 years from the date of the last certificate of occupancy in the development. All trees that, in the opinion of the county, will not survive for this minimum time period must be replaced by the owner of the property. In that case, it would be the homeowner. So I don't know, if just open discussion again, if any of you guys have any thought about applying the code on that lot as much as feasibly possible, then having a planting over there on Bay Drive to maybe start creating a canopy over that road, because I don't think there is a canopy over that road. Last time I was down there wasn't.
If we do that, we're going to open up Pandora's box, because now every lot of record in the hammock is going to be in front of us at some point in time, and they're going to say, oh, just let me plant trees in the park on Arbor Day and let me clear cut this lot so I can build a house on it.
Well, we're not asking for that,
I don't
we're
think
not
we should
asking for
open that
someone to
box.
clear cut. They still have to maintain, like in this case, as much as feasibly possible on the property.
I understand what
I
you're
think
saying,
there's,
and I like the idea, but I don't think we can proceed down that road without legislative guidance. We need an ordinance in place that says exactly what our code is and what we do and how we can deviate from it in order to allow these things to be accommodated. And I don't have a problem with the county commission passing an ordinance that allows us to do that. But we don't have that ordinance in front of us now. We're just flying and blind in the wind. And if we open this up, then every single neighbor of this particular lot has the right to come in front of us and say, make accommodation for me. Y'all did it before, make accommodation for me. I don't think we should open that box.
Mr.
Not
Chairman,
tonight.
Go ahead, Jack.
just a couple comments. So I wish the trees were there, but I guess every single tree is gone from this lot, from what I can tell. You know, they're not there
Right.
now. So
They're all, there were two that were supposed to
Right.
remain.
Two were
They
supposed to
unfortunately
remain,
were
and
in the
they're gone.
front of the property, which caused problems anyway, so.
I was trying to get on the solution side of this and get some trees back. Now, I'm concerned about the neighbors. I mean, we could require that they just every 10, 15 feet on the left side, pound a bunch of trees in, but that's going to screw up, you know, that water's got to go somewhere when it rains. And if we mess up that water is probably going to go into the neighbor's yard too, not just this house. So, you know, there's room to put more trees, but I think that would be a negative to neighboring properties too, if the water can't flow toward the street. So, yeah, they should be penalized some way, and maybe it's double or triple, but planting trees in the hammock elsewhere is getting on the solution side of this, and as many trees as possible on the lot. Right now, there are no trees.
Right, yeah, I think, go ahead, Mike.
I agree with what he said. I don't think there's a sensible way. I think it's impossible to meet the requirement sensibly. I mean, you're talking about 4-inch trees, it would take 18 of them to meet the requirement. I don't see anywhere where you can put 18 trees on there. So in my opinion, obviously, there's got to be some kind of different arrangement made, because you can't meet the 72-inch requirement. Like he's talking about, you're going to mess up drainage. Something's going to happen that you don't want to happen. So there's got to be some other type of way to come to a solution besides putting 18 trees on that piece of property.
Go ahead, Mr. Goodman.
All right. I mean, I'm having a hard time here with this process. I think the question at hand is, do we uphold Mr. Mengel's decision or we don't uphold it? I mean, by us going, around the bush here, I think the right thing is to uphold his decision because it is the right decision. I mean, I heard things by the applicant, oh, I didn't want to spend the money to do this, oh, it's going to cost money to do that. I see tree companies trimming trees all the time to get around the wires. I mean, these are a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of excuses after the fact. And again, I guess at this point, I will make a motion to uphold Mr. Mengel's decision, and if it need be, let it go before the commissioners.
Second.
Okay, right now we have a motion and a second. We have any more discussion on this motion? Go ahead, Jack, if you want.
Well, I was going to make my own motion. Can I do that now, or do we got to?
I think we need to first hear this motion, and we can discuss this motion, and then we'll vote on it. And then if that motion passes, there's no more motions. If it doesn't pass, then we open the floor to another motion. So do you have any comments on this motion? You don't have to comment. I'm just, you spoke up, so I don't want to
I've
shut you
said my
down.
comments. No, I don't have any comment on the motion.
So if we go with Mr. Mengel's suggestion, where does this put the applicant?
That's a good question.
We have a temporary CO that was issued with a 6-month timing. I think Mr. Langello's comment was on track. And I also have had, Mr. Moylan and I have had discussions with several commissioners about the index tree edits that we have. We've had some staff drafts going back and forth. That likely will be communicated back to the board. We'll probably have some of that moving quicker because of this. If there's ultimately a denial, one way or the other, I'll say that we intend to bring it back. Where before it had been several months, we've been saying several months. I'll say that this will likely come back to you in some form. I would venture maybe before June or July that we'll have that coming for planning board review, and then we'll have it back to the board. So Part of what we were thinking with the 6 months on the temporary CO is maybe if you did deny, they still have the avenue where they could appeal to the Board of County Commissioners. And then likewise, we had enough timing where we could potentially cover an amendment to the Land Development Code, the legislative solution that Mr. Connor mentioned. And so that potential's there. That may not be the panacea that's going to get us, that's going to solve this, but it will be something that will be the expression of both the planning board's recommendation on that land development code change, and then the ultimate action and authority of the Board of County Commissioners exhibited in an ordinance amending the land development code. So my convoluted way to answer your question, telling you what time is it? I'm going to tell you how to mine the lithium to make the battery. On his end, it's 6 months on the temporary CO. Mr. Langella mentioned it. They're going to be having potentially some problems. They can't flip it. They're going to have to hang on to it until that temporary CO becomes a permanent CO. I don't know how that handles any lending. That may be an issue for them. We didn't talk with them about that before, but it is what it is. So that temporary CO is at least able to survive for 6 months, can be extended through the authority of the building official, should it be needed to be extended.
What's the process for extension of that?
I think it could be just a request made, and especially if we've got kind of the zoning and progress type feel that we've got going on right now, I think that would be something that, I don't want to speak for the building official, but I think that could be viewed favorably to extend it. My fingers crossed, I think if with the 6 months issuance of that, I think we can get this resolved in 6 months.
Excuse me, Mr. Mangle. First of all, I want to let Anthony continue, but Mr. Connor, you made a comment directly to him, and I couldn't hear what you said. What was your question?
My question was, what's the extension procedure for taking that 6 months and moving it out more if the homeowner needs more
Thank you.
time?
Yeah, you had
I'm not
turned-
trying to throw this guy out of his house. I think the temporary CO makes sense. And so Adam's thinking that we can get this done within the 6 month period of time, but if not, I want to make sure that the homeowner has the ability to extend the temporary, and Adam said we could.
Okay, thank you. I want to let Anthony continue his line.
Is this a primary residence? Can we have the applicant come up and find, so they're going to get it, if we deny this, they're going to get a 6 month temporary CO.
They already have it.
Okay.
They have
they
that-
already have the
Yeah, they
temporary.
have that now.
Okay.
Yes.
Is this a primary residence for your brother?
It's a primary
So it's not investment property, it's not,
No,
okay.
My brother, this is where he's gonna live till
Okay.
the day he dies.
Okay.
Excuse me. Is the comment related to his question? If the comment's not related to his question, then we've already closed that section. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So they have a 6 month temporary CO right now.
Yes, sir.
So with denial, ball is back in their court to resolve, so are they going to come back to us now with a solution of their plantings or anything? Or is it now, what happens to them at that point with their temporary CO? Is it just sitting out there as a temporary CO, or will it eventually, how do they get their CO, their full CO?
So the way I would see it working then, if you deny the appeal today, there's a 30-day clock that starts from basically from the time of denial. I think it may refer to a time of issuance of an order. We'll get the order out as quick as we can. And so that clock starts ticking. The applicant can file or anyone can file an appeal. A party was standing, as Mr. Moylan had mentioned. So it could even be the denial could generate two appeals. It could generate an appeal from an applicant and from an affected property owner or somebody was standing. The denial, following that appeal option number one, option number two, and one that we will likely proceed regardless of whether this is approved or whichever way it goes, is to come back with the amendments to the index tree section of the Land Development Code. That will include some tree bank. We've been directed to do that. We've talked about that. So that tree fund or tree bank will be in there. Other than that, I don't want to foreshadow. We've talked about several other options. We'll bring that forward. That will come back to Planning Board for you to review, for you to discuss, and for you to provide recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on its ultimate adoption. Timing of that, I think, could be safely said by around June. Putting it in front of the Board of County Commissioners by July is what I think our timeframe would be on that. However, this applicant, once you dispense with this application, approve or deny, uphold the planning director's denial or effectively vote against it and call and let it happen, this applicant's not coming back.
Okay. So will they have an opportunity to get a CO
Yeah.
at some point in time?
Yeah, I think the route for them, one would be the appeal and so they could take this to the board. The board could then potentially end up upholding they would end up approving the appeal, and they would overturn the director's decision, and then that would be one avenue for the CO. The other one would be the scenario, the as yet unwritten land development code changes, and then they would meet those requirements on the property. Those would go into effect, well, at the time they're basically approved and then filed with the Secretary of State, they become effective.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comment on? A couple things. One, to Mr. Connor's point about you're opening Pandora's box. Everything is unique. We're not actually legislating, as was said. We're hearing this issue. I mean, I'm more of the vein to try to do what we can do. We've done this before. We've kicked it to the commission, and you know what happens? It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, I can see it. And I think I hate to see the code be forced in a rewrite, be pushed out, and we have another. I was pointing out to you, Adam, problems with this existing code, how just, people aren't thinking through all the issues, and so it didn't really answer all the questions. One of the unique things on this particular lot is that the applicant came for a permit. The applicant got approved for a permit, and those 2 trees were removed by his testimony, not necessarily with his. He wasn't conscious of that. He didn't go out there and say, let's tear these trees down. They were a third party to the site contract that came up and started that process, which opened up this problem. Did plenty of things incorrectly, didn't come back right then and there, and he hasn't made any plantings. He should have made plantings. So for a lot of reasons, you could be tough and say just what I'm hearing, which is valid. I'm not saying it's not valid, just following all the rules. However, I think even if you follow all the rules on this property, you still have a problem. And I'm not sure that you're going to be able to write an ordinance that's going to fix this particular problem. I mean, I don't know how it fixes this one. It may allow something on a new application to be addressed correctly, and I think the penalties and ramifications should be thought out more in the code. Again, that's why I hate to see a code be pushed through. If we were to broaden the scope of the intent of the scenic corridor, I think there is a solution in here. And what is the ramification of it? Well, look, if you get as many trees as you can as a canopy, that's all the canopy. But now you can also get more trees, perhaps, like I say, in Bay Park. I bring that one up because I haven't been there in several years, but it was a big moonscape when I went there. There wasn't anything but grass growing on that property. Well, a few plantings, but for the most part, it's a big moonscape. And getting some trees there would both help the CO2 and the birds and everything else all the nature lover reasons to put a tree there and not just approve the request to overlook what you said. I think, you're following the code as applied, but the code has got problems. So and we heard from our attorney that solution is not and it's not an illegal or it may be even unadvised. He didn't say, I advise you not to do this tonight. And there is one other solution that I looked at too, which is we could make the recommendation to that. I'm wondering, I'm going to ask the attorney, instead of actually passing it, but we could make a recommendation to one of the solutions that we talked about. But that recommendation now would go to the county commission for them to act because it is sort of legislative. So I don't know if that's going outside of the rules either. And so I'm going to ask Sean to chime in on that question.
Mr. Chair, that is not provided in the code. You would have to.
Okay.
You have those choices to approve, deny, and an appeal is the mechanism to get to the county commission.
Okay. All right. But in that approval, the approval can be with all the caveats to mitigate this problem, because the way I would not approve, denying Mr. Mengel's interpretation of the code, because that's just insane if you ask me. I think no one up here is saying so. But a solution where you could take it to the logical steps to solve the problem tonight, would be a way of handling this, correct?
Yes, if the board decides that, yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if there's any other discussion on the, Mr. Connor, go ahead.
I have a comment on what you just said. I agree with most of what you just said. The distinct difference in this context is that there is no variance requirement or variance procedure for the tree ordinance. And so hardship, innocence, unique lot configurations, none of those things apply to this situation because the variance code is not what we're looking at. We're looking at the tree ordinance and it's a different animal.
Right, and to further that comment, what I'm saying is that the code is deficient, and the tree ordinance itself makes it almost impossible, if not in this case, impossible to adequately enforce. I think, again, Jackie had a great comment. Again, one item right off the bat is if you were to try to put all the trees in here, you may cause a problem with drainage. Another issue is you put all those trees on that property, it's going to be a problem. The branches and whatnot are going to be growing right into these houses. I mean,
Welcome to the hammock.
yeah. So strict adherence, while it sounds good on paper, may not be the best practical solution. And as we heard, it would not be, out of our purview to try to make the solution tonight. If we had no avenue to do that, I would not recommend doing it. But since there perhaps is an avenue, that's why I'm recommending that we look to solve it tonight versus kicking it down the road and hope another solution comes up. That's why I, will probably vote against the denial, but the spirit of that motion, I'm agreeing with. I just think the end result is it still won't fix the problem. So, I don't know if you want to comment. You always get the last word. I'm not going to take the last word.
No, I'm finished.
Okay. Anyone else want to make comment before I bring this to a vote?
Jack, you had a motion?
No. Well,
Well, the motion on the table is Mr. Goodman's.
yes, we have to hear that.
If you want to
motion first.
clarify.
Then if that motion approved, that ends the item. If it is not approved, we are open for another motion. Any other comments? Okay, I'll bring this motion to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
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 So that's 4 ayes and 3 nays. Is that correct? You were an aye? Aye, aye, and aye. That's 4 ayes, 3 nays. The motion is to deny the motion, was what that motion was.
Deny the appeal.
Deny the appeal. So that does end the matter tonight. Okay, so again, for the applicant, you can talk to Adam again and the attorney, but there are other avenues at this point to go forward. Okay. We're moving on to number 6, staff comments.
No comments. Thank you, sir.
Really, nothing.
Nothing.
After all that iteration, nothing. Okay, board comments.
I'll make a comment. So in regards to, this application, I mean, it seems to be a problem, especially, I guess, for the hammock in these specific lots and locations, figuring out a solution to significantly warn the contractor during the permit application period that, this is something that they need to be completely aware of. That, it'd be up to, I don't know, the county commission or whoever it might be in regards to a significant fine if they were to not, play by the rules. And I'm sure with a nice big pink piece of paper that's showing them what the fine is and what they need to abide by, I'm sure the contractor will make sure that they're on property when their land clearer and tree trimmers are there instead of showing up after the fact because of the hefty fine that they're going to have to pay when they, if something like this happens again. So I think something in these specific permit packages that come through the hammock, figure out what a substantial fine is going to be and make sure they know it. So when it does happen,
I think I agree with you. And one of the immediate actions you can take is all of the lots of records or lots that have all these trees, a particular, statement be made and they have to sign it maybe, acknowledging that this is it, not just hand it to them, but make them sign as part of their packet. And that's just a procedural thing that I guess you guys institute within your office. The fines would have to be done through the commission or whatever else that aren't in place. But I think that's good because that does help.
I mean,
You know.
it makes everybody accountable.
Yep. Okay, do we have any other board comment? I do have a comment. I limped in here today. I have a bad leg, and I've had it for 42 years. I am scheduled to have knee replacement surgery on May 13th, and May 14th is the meeting. I don't think I'll be here, so Mike, if you're not going to be here, they have to make another resolution. Hopefully you're here for the 14th. Okay, that's all I have to say. Okay, public comment. Anyone in the public like to come forward and make any comment on any issue that was not heard tonight? Please come forward.
Good evening, Robin Pauletta, Halifax Plantation. Another area with beautiful trees that the developers were very sensitive in developing. But we have half-acre lots. And the lot that's in the hammock, it looks like they're not even 2/10 of an acre. Because a 2/10 of an acre is about 8,400 square feet. These are 5,000 square feet. So I think there's a case here of the cart being pulled before the horse, so to speak. And so there has to be, in whatever ordinance rewrite, and this has been 2 years coming, this isn't something, I mean, I've been here sitting in these meetings for a long time, and the tree ordinance has been under discussion for at least 2.5 years, if not longer. And I won't get into the reasons for that. I really don't know what the reasons are, but my main point is that when you're dealing with small lots that have canopy trees, you have to take a very careful look at the footprint of and the design of the house that's going in. You just can't do a maximum concrete pad. Maybe you have to look more at like the Charleston style, where it's perpendicular, the bulk of the house is perpendicular to the street and running along the lot. So you can allow the driveway and the planting of trees and the drainage fields if they're still septic, which hopefully that's going to change in the next 5 years. Keep my fingers crossed on that one. Anyway, my main point, though, is that there has to be a correlation between the plans being submitted for said small lot and the tree ordinances. And by the way, Bay Drive would be a horrible place to plant supplemental trees to try and balance things out because of the harsh salt environment. Thank you.
Anyone else in the public like to come forward? Okay, seeing that, we have none other. So at this point, I ask for adjournment. Anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.